In many retellings of the Mongol conquests, the Chinese are often presented as being immediately crushed by the hooves of Mongol horses. Yet such a presentation ignores the many centuries of combat between the Middle Kingdom and the Horsemen of the Great Steppe, and the fact that it took the Mongol Empire over 60 years to conquer China. Continuing our series on defending against the Mongols, we will offer a brief overview of the means by which Chinese dynasties fought against northern nomads. Hey history fans, quick channel update before we jump to the video. As we've said previously, most of the money earned by this channel is being reinvested into more better researched and better made videos, as well as our Wizards and Warriors and Cold War channels. We prefer to rely on our kind patrons and YouTube members, and not sponsors. No one likes excessive sponsorships. However, right now having sponsors is a necessity. Still, we vow that as soon as we get to 10,000 patrons and YouTube members, we'll stop adding sponsorships to our videos. We have a great team and we want to be able to continue paying them living or competitive wages and not cut back on production. So until the algorithm is more favorable and we can release more than 3 videos per week, extra videos that our team has created will be posted as YouTube member and Patreon exclusives. 1 or 2 videos per week will be exclusively available for our YouTube members and patrons, whose ranks you can join by pressing the button below the video or becoming a patron via the link in the description. Don't worry though, these videos will not be from one of the ongoing series and will be either standalone episodes or belong to a new series. For just $5 you can support our work, watch exclusive videos, there are 10 now and more are added every week, get early access to free videos, learn our schedule, get access to our private Discord, watch our behind the scenes videos, and much more. Thank you for watching and for your kind support. We wouldn't be able to do what we love without you. When Genghis Khan invaded North China's Jin dynasty in 1211, this was the latest, if most dramatic, round in a series going well back over a millennium. When his armies crossed the Gobi Desert, much of northern China had already been under the rule of nomadic and semi-nomadic horse archer conquest dynasties since the 10th century. From active defense to dissuasion and everything in between, all sorts of tactics and strategies had been employed, with varying levels of success, to stymie the advance of the nomads. These relationships were not uniform, but we can observe some general trends. Firstly was the difficulty for Chinese armies to operate in the open steppes of Mongolia. Nomads subsisted off their herds, who survived off the veritable ocean of grassland. For Chinese armies, reliant on baggage trains and products of farmland, the steppes seemed a desert. Additionally, more mobile nomadic armies generally avoided direct conflict with Chinese invaders, dragging them along as their supplies wore thin and striking when they weakened, or dispersing utterly and denying confrontation at all. Though these challenges could be met by skilled commanders, like the Yongle Emperor of the Ming dynasty, for lesser generals it led to humiliating disasters. With that said, let us look at the means employed against the nomads. It's best to deal first with the most famous, the Great Wall of China. Though Chinese border fortifications go back before even the first imperial unification by the Qin, the Great Wall of China is the single structure that has survived history. China's first emperor, Qin Shi Huangdi, constructed an infamous long wall on the state's northern border. However, that wall, made of pounded earth and layers of reeds, long since eroded. Rather, different dynasties in China built a number of walls in different places and maintained them for short periods. The iconic winding structure that stands today was built by the Ming dynasty during the 16th century, some 400 years after the Mongol conquest of China. In the time of Genghis Khan, there were border walls constructed by the Jin dynasty, which ran through flatlands in Inner Mongolia, consisting of low rammed earth walls and ditches. But the tribes manning these fortifications submitted to Genghis Khan and allowed him free passage. Border walls were neither the first nor last line of defense. They served 3 primary purposes. First, dissuading nomadic attacks along a certain route. Second, a signaling service to alert of enemy attacks and give time for garrisons behind the wall to mobilize for the threat. And third, control over border trade. Chinese dynasties often restricted the sale of weapons to the nomads, and building their border walls could, in theory, control this trade or funnel it to a select few choke points for tax purposes. Over-reliance on walls as pure defensive structures were usually signs of the dynasty's weakness, as occurred in the late Ming period after the humiliation of the Tumu crisis in 1449, when Mongols captured the Ming Emperor and besieged Beijing. After this, the Ming began the expansion of the Great Wall to first protect the route to Beijing from the north, and gradually almost the entire northern frontier. Generally, the actual first line of defense against nomadic attacks was prevention. That is, dissuading them diplomatically, or encouraging the nomads to fight each other. A common tool of persuasion was extensive gift-giving, essentially a sort of Danegeld to buy off the nomads before their attack. Though more than one court official bemoaned this as humiliation, it was considerably cheaper than an actual invasion. While sometimes it is claimed these treaties intended to civilize and weaken the martial ability of the nomads with Chinese culture, there isn't great support for this. For nearly the first century of its existence, China's illustrious Han dynasty had to recognize the Xiongnu rulers in Mongolia as equal brothers who were owed annual tributes known as the Heqin Treaties, sending mammoth amounts of silk alongside grain, princesses, and other treasures. As a means to civilize the barbarians, they rather failed and appears a retroactive justification. The Han had more success against the Xiongnu by encouraging revolt among its vassals and princes and strengthening its rivals, coupled with a few well-placed campaigns of its own. The most effective means of defense was preventing nomadic unity through divide and rule tactics. Over the 10th to early 12th centuries, Eastern Mongolia and parts of North China were controlled by the Liao dynasty, which was ruled by the Khitans, a people related to the Mongols. After their conquest of Mongolia, they established garrisons, forts, and towns across Mongolia, and ruled through what is called a dual administration, using customary law of Khitans and other nomads in the steppe, and Tang dynasty laws for its Chinese and Bohai population. In addition to garrisons and a more familiar law, the Liao dynasty also reorganized the population of the Mongolian plateau into a number of bu, which can be translated as unit, department, or tribe. This saw the removal of existing nomad leaders and their replacement with loyalists to the Liao dynasty, each given an allotted region to call their own, while also serving as units for taxation and administrative needs. This method kept the Liao secure on their steppe border, though less so on their northeastern border, where the Jurchen people in Manchuria eventually rose up, toppled the Liao, declared the Jin dynasty, and conquered North China. However, the Jin did not take Mongolia, and with the passing of the Liao garrisons, the steppes were in a power vacuum. Groups like the Keriid, who had not been under direct Liao control, grew to become the most powerful, while others, like the nascent Mongols, ruled by the grandfathers of Chinggis Khan, were becoming a nuisance. Here, the Jin employed a very different technique than the Liao. They made the peoples along their borders their vassals, who manned the lines of fortifications the Jin built in the steppes just south of the Gobi, and provided titles, luxury goods, beneficial trade ties, and military support to those specific groups. For the second half of the 12th century, this was chiefly the Tatars in eastern Mongolia who acted as the enforcers of Jin interests, and stopped any other group from becoming too powerful. And when the Tatars grew too rebellious, the Jin switched their support to another people, who would then push down the Tatars. In the 1190s, this was a Keriid Khan named To'oril, and a rising Mongol warlord named Temujin. Unfortunately for the Jin, while their attention was distracted by internal troubles and war with the southern Song dynasty, this warlord in the north went on to subjugate the nomads. In 1206, he declared the Mongol Empire and took a new title, Chinggis Khan. Soon after, he took his new nation on the offensive against the Jin. What did the Jin do to confront the Mongol attack? As already noted, the Jin's border guard largely submitted to the new Mongol emperor. Yet the Jin themselves were no meek force, and arguably held the single greatest military in the world at that time. At their core were the Jurchen horse archers and fearsome heavy cavalry, supported by Khitan horsemen and thousands upon thousands of Chinese infantry and crossbowmen. As the North China Plain is divided from the Mongol steppes by the Yan Mountains, the Jin defense focused on the select navigable passes through them, which were guarded by strong gates and towers. The Jin reinforced these gates, spreading caltrops and ditches before them. Fierce fighting followed, but the Jin were overconfident. The Mongols relied on deserters, spies and scouts to inform them of Jin positions, allowing them to find unguarded passes and exploit weakness. To overcome the Jin forts while lacking their own siege tools, the Mongols employed feigned retreats in abundance, and haughty or revenge-seeking Jin defenders fell for it with startling regularity. The Jin were hampered by poor leadership. Within the first 2 years of the war with the Mongols, the Jin's offensive and political capabilities were ground down. A coup in 1213 and the new emperor abandoning the central capital of Zhengdu heralded this. Soon after arriving in the new capital of Kaiping, the new Jin emperor launched a large invasion of the Song dynasty to the south. The further division of the strained Jin forces weakened their ability at organized resistance. Many cities were simply left to their own devices against the Khan's horsemen. With the accession of a new Jin emperor in 1224, and the absence of the main Mongol armies in Khwarezm, and peace between Jin, Song and the Tangut Kingdom, efforts were made to better prepare against the Mongols. The Yellow River now stood as the primary barrier between the Jin state and the Mongol Empire, and the few routes around or over it were given extra garrisons and reinforced. This also saw the creation of a new army to better combat the Mongols. Called the Loyal and Filial Army, this was an army specially made for anti-Mongol activities. Composed of captives and deserters from the Mongol army, it was a mixed force of northern Chinese, Tangut, Uyghur, Naiman and Kipchak origin, fighting as mounted horse archers like the Mongols. Paid triple that of regular soldiers and armed with fire weapons, this became the vanguard of the new Jin offensives to reclaim their lands. Shortly after the enthronement of the new Great Khan, Ugade, news came that this army inflicted several serious defeats on the Mongols. One of these was even against a rising Mongol general named Sube'etei, whom a furious Ugade nearly removed permanently from command in his wrath. The Jin were at their most effective when they fought the closest to the Mongols. However, this final effort was too little too late. By 1234, in alliance with the Song dynasty, the Mongols crushed the last of the Jin resistance. Soon after, the Mongols and Song were also at war. Here, the Song frontier differed from the Jin experience. The Song had fought with armies of horsemen back to Khitan invasions, when one of their strategies had been planting a belt of forests along the frontier to break up Khitan cavalry formations. The Song territory was less forgiving to cavalry, both hillier and damper, cut by many rivers, marshes, wetlands and rice fields that could rot the hooves of horses and spread disease among the northerners. The Song dynasty's modern reputation for military incompetence is undeserved, though. The resistance of the southern Chinese was some of the fiercest the Mongols would face. The Song's large cities were protected by mighty walls and wide moats. Border forts and walls guarded major routes, while the Yangtze River served as an immense natural barrier, patrolled by the Song navy. The Song employed all manners of defensive weaponry, from counter-artillery catapults and giant crossbows, fire lances and bombs, to well-armoured infantry protected by long spears and stout shields. The Song court, if far from ideal, still managed to produce some skilled leadership, most famously Jia Sidao, and managed a surprising degree of flexibility. While the Mongols often deeply penetrated Song borders, rapid mobilization of several Song armies made it difficult for Mongol gains to be held, and often these cities were retaken soon after the Mongols passed. In Sichuan province, there was fierce resistance in over 40 years of almost continuous warfare, which bogged down Great Khan Mungke and cost his life from infected waters in a siege, while Song defenders killed his top generals. The Song defense was based around employing the maximum amount of friction against the Mongols, hoping that their tenacity would eventually wear them down. It proved, however, a misplaced strategy, courtly infighting and the arrogance of Chancellor Jia Sidao, struggled to deal with the economic cost of the decades-long war. Court expenses didn't end, as more and more finance and manpower was thrown into the conflict. Despite its immense population, the Song struggled to field enough troops against the Mongols, who were mobilizing not just Mongols and men from across northern China, but from across Asia. Turkic horsemen, siege engineers from the Ilkhanate, and shipbuilders from Korea were all compiled for Kublai Khan's conquest of the Song. The vigor with which the Mongols approached the Song War outstripped that which the Song could produce, and finally, after tremendous effort, the last of their holdouts fell in 1279. The expulsion of the Mongol Yuan dynasty from China in 1368 did not end Mongol attacks, and the new Ming dynasty had to relearn how to defend against them. The early Ming period saw invasions of Mongolia, some led by the Yongle Emperor himself. This disrupted life in the steppe, destabilized the northern Yuan, and won a number of victories, but never resulted in conquest or definite gains. Under the Yongle Emperor's watch, the Ming encouraged rivalries between the Western Mongols, the Oirat, and the Yuan remnants, sending supplies and titles to both parties, helping create a division in Mongol society and never letting either become too powerful. But the Yongle Emperor's death in 1424 ended the most effective campaigns and political meddling, which allowed the Oirat, under their leaders Tokhun and his son Esen Taishi, to dominate Mongolia by the end of the 1430s. The few Ming armies sent against him were crushed, as Esen Taishi campaigned from Manchuria to Central Asia. The Ming decided to instead cut off trade with Mongolia entirely. In response, Esen Taishi began raiding the Ming border. When the young, inexperienced Ming emperor tried to face him in battle directly, Esen Taishi captured him in 1449 and laid siege to Beijing. In reaction to this humiliating failure, the Ming went on the defensive, beginning their Great Wall along their northern border. Even still, northern Yuan armies penetrated the frontier, and in 1550, Altan Khan laid siege to Beijing again. The greatest protection the late Ming received was the breakup of this renewed Mongol unity, and the growth of rival aristocrats in Mongolia itself as the Khan's influence waned. This precipitated the expansion of the descendants of the Jurchen, the Manchu, under Nahadzi and his Huang Taiji, who managed to diplomatically isolate the last remaining Chinggisid monarch in Mongolia, Ligdan Khan. With Ligdan Khan's death in 1634, his son submitted to the Manchu and their newly established Qing dynasty. With the young Khan as their subject, the Manchu managed to take submission through threat, force, or diplomacy of almost all the Mongols. Here, the Qing employed the actions of the Khitan Liao. Mongol political units were broken up and reassigned to Qing loyalists to make a new aristocracy, and thus dismantle the network that would previously have led revolts. Mongol horsemen thus accompanied the Qing in the conquest of China in the coming years. Though sporadic Mongol revolts broke out, they were too few and disunited against the immense Qing armies, well armed with ample gunpowder weapons, to pose an existential threat, though they certainly alarmed the Qing. More videos on the Mongols are on the way, so make sure you are subscribed and have pressed the bell button to see them. Please consider liking, commenting and sharing, it helps immensely. Our videos would be impossible without our kind patrons and YouTube channel members, whose ranks you can join via the links down in the description to know our schedule, get early access to our videos, access our Discord, and much more. This is the Kings and Generals channel, and we will catch you on the next one.